meeting to order. This meeting will be video recorded and broadcast over local access channel 8 and through the town website at www.eastham-ma.gov. All right, we'll start with public and select board information. Anything from the board?
No.
Suzanne?
No.
Jerry?
Yeah, well, only, I can't get the video started. It said it won't allow me to do it. That's the only thing
Rich is
I've
working
got.
on it.
Hang on.
It is? Okay, great. That's all.
All right, anyone from the public have anything they'd like to talk to us about that is not on the agenda? All right, nobody here. Any hands up there? I don't see any. All right, we'll move on to our first appointment, our moderator, Scott Carey. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome people watching at home and the audience. I just wanted to kind of touch base. There are two reasons for that. Number one, we're about 5 months away now, so getting excited. And it's great. Tom McNamara from, I'm not sure if you were officially representing the Eastham part-time residents taxpayers when you came to see me, but we got together late fall, right before the holidays, and just Tom was kind of, talking about the process of town meeting and great questions, and wanted to know about the interaction of non-voters and questions and stuff like that. So we had a nice conversation, and when I saw him, I said I would spend some time looking back under three lenses that a moderator would want to look at. One is the state law that we need to follow when we're at town meeting. The other is our charter. And then the third item that we all think about when we do town meeting is the precedent. So what have other town moderators done in the past? What is Eastham's rules about this and rules about that? And what have we come to expect when we gather in May? And so it was an excellent opportunity for me to kind of revisit some stuff, and I'll kind of circle back to that in a second. And so I just wanted to thank him for that conversation. It was terrific. And as you know, and people watching from home and here, the job of the moderator is to ensure that the town's business, which is before us, which is the warrant, before us at town meeting, is acted upon in a fair and just manner, and all registered voters have equal access to participate freely, to be heard by their fellow voters, and ultimately get to vote. With that being said, I understand your desire and others who have approached me, and there was an email chain that went around from Tom to, I think, one of the select board members that circled back to me as well through Jackie. And Jackie, thank you for putting some laws and rules to paper. We certainly appreciate that, and it's another example of how lucky we are to have you. So I just wanted everyone to know that, as we get ready for town meeting, I am aware of that, the dichotomy that we have in this town, like others do across the Cape. And it's amazing when you Google town meeting, non-resident voters, and, an article from Sharon, and then one from Waltham, and then there's one from this town and that town, and I get it. I mean, my parents were non-resident taxpayers. I know several people on the board, Art and Jerry, I believe, were as well, and you want to be heard, and you pay a lot of money for your taxes. I get all that, and and I want there to be people that walk out of town meeting. I want them to say, "Wow, that was great," and I'm really glad I got to participate. So there are a couple of things, and haven't made any decisions, nothing new, so to speak, but just want to kind of, for those people kind of watching at home, when you get to town meeting, you get the warrant, and at the back of the warrant, which is an appendix that's put together by our select board and our town administrator, and this particular one just happens to say, this is from Eastham's last year, non-resident or non-voters who wish to address town meeting have identified themselves in advance to the moderator may only speak if permitted by the majority consent of the voters. That's kind of an interesting paragraph. Then Secretary Galvin, in his packet that defines town meeting, says, great question, who may speak, ? And says, all the town's registered voters may speak in an open or representative town meeting. So on and so non-voters may speak at the discretion of the moderator before town meeting. So kind of another, another sort of the same kind of thing. So anyways, just wanted to kind of say that there is some precedent. Talked to the moderators who went before me. Everybody has a little bit different take on it. My typical style is I do want to reach out and to hear from people. With that being said, if the body before me who has theoretically put me in the position that I'm in says to me at that meeting that they don't want that to happen, that sort of is my job to follow along from their wishes, because that is a vote that they've put forward. And, and then when I start to let this person bend that rule, and I don't let this person bend that rule, then I'm in a discriminatory situation, and I certainly don't want to be in that role. So I just want everyone to know that, it's a role that I take extremely seriously. I understand everyone's desire to be part of the process. And, obviously, budgets are getting bigger, taxes are going up, there's lots going on, there's development, you know what I mean? So people's intensity is rising, and, I feel like in Eastham, we want to temper all of that down and be the role model of others in democracy. So just want everyone to know that I understand where, people are going, and I'm, doing my thing, and, we're getting ready, and as the warrant comes out, we'll have more to report. We're also going to have an opportunity, Jackie and I, to visit the middle school, which we'll be having the Maytown meeting. And at this point, we don't even know which of the facility, what area of the facility, whether it'll be the gym or the cafeteria or the basketball court, so to speak. So we really don't even know what the layout will look.
Or
but
the
we will-
auditorium, too.
Or wherever we may end up.
That'd be my
It'll
preference,
have a
but-
different setup, and, it'll give us an opportunity to do that. So I just want everyone to know that, and I heard you loud and clear, and, I appreciate your questions. My recommendation, having done this for a few years, is, if you're watching at home or you want to get involved, now is the time to get involved. Come to the meetings, have your voices heard, email your select board, tell them what's on your mind. And that is going to ultimately, whether you're a voter or a non-voter, that's going to be the way that you get their attention, and that we build policy based upon those things. So if anyone has any specific questions, I'm more than happy to take them. And again, there was one other thing, and I just wanted to address it. There was some suggestion that questions had to be 7 days ahead of time, and that's not been under my watch, so I don't know where that came from. If you make a motion, it has to be in writing, at the time of the meeting, but other than that, I'm not sure if anybody on the board, you guys sort of had the email, and you saw what Jackie wrote back, and so if anybody at home or, in the audience has any questions, or,
I don't,
it'd
I
be-
don't remember seeing that. Well, I'm going to let the
Yeah.
board talk first, Tom.
Yeah, I was just gonna thank you, because I've been doing this a little while now, so I've gotten to experience different moderators even before I was on the board, being at town meeting. And, I really appreciate having you up there, because you do know you are backing your actions up with the law, which is so important to give the entire structure of town meeting legs. That's what makes it work. So I think you do a phenomenal job, and we appreciate you up there. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It'd be chaos otherwise. It
Yeah,
really
we
would
really
be.
appreciate you up there. It's hard.
Suzanne,
Hard
do
work.
you have anything?
I have a comment, I guess. In the work that you do, I think it's important to make it very clear when a non-resident taxpayer or non-resident in general is speaking. For you as the moderator, to be able to easily identify who that person is, so you don't have to also constantly ask people that question. And then just for the overall production of town meeting, it's a lot, and we put non-residents in one area, and we don't really distinguish whether or not they own property here. And I don't want to have to add that extra level of complexity to your job or the people who put on town meeting to do that extra screening. And so, yeah, I appreciate the work that you do, and I do want it to be as easy for you as possible to maintain the system.
I think one thing that came to mind while we've been sitting here is, and with Tom here, now Tom's a non-resident taxpayer, but he's also on our finance committee.
He gets to talk.
So we have, I think it is a little more lax for committee members, it should be.
Right.
We don't have very many non-resident taxpayers on committees. And that's my opinion. It's not, and it is solely up to you, I think, to,
As I said, I want people to be heard. But, you do get into these situations, and we have, I believe, worked towards not having separate sections. And that's been
Clickers.
made easier because of the electronic voting. So, I don't think that's been, as I said, when you're on the field, it's a big area, and, there's no, if you're going to that section and you just pass it by and go to that one, there is no one to guide you, so to speak. So, but I think that the idea that there's only one vote for one person has allowed people to sit with whom they want, and I have no real issue with that at all. But we'll see what the setup is, and then we'll be in a position where we.
gotcha. Jerry, did you have anything to add?
No, I've got faith in Scott that he's going to run a fair meeting, so it's really your discretion, Scott. And we'll back you. At least I will.
But thanks, Jerry.
It's nice.
All right, Tom, was there something you wanted to add, since you kind of started all this
Yeah, you started
discussion, so?
So, actually, I wanted to thank Scott for actually taking the time to meet with me back in November. And actually, he's covered the 2 points. The 2 questions we had was, is there still a need with electronic voting to segregate out the 2? And he said tonight that with the electronic voting, everyone's given a device, the likelihood of someone raising their hand as there was in the old days and being inappropriately counted is gone. And the second question he also answered, there was a belief amongst the part-timers, we had to submit questions ahead of time. And that was also, driven, and maybe Scott, you could elaborate on this. Last year, a part-timer did get up to speak, and once she identified herself as a part-timer, was told she could not speak because we would have to, and I'm paraphrasing, start over. And then that person sat down and no other part-timers got up to speak at the meeting. So there was a little confusion there that we want to try to eliminate, okay? I think Jackie and Scott have also come up with the idea of a primer in terms of how the meeting is conducted. And I think, Scott, you do a good job. We're not, taking offense to the way you do the meeting. I think the meeting is run well. Certainly, it's tough to run a meeting that large and still accomplish the objectives of getting the warrants and the article all done appropriately. But I think that primer would go a long way, maybe to putting everybody on the same page regularly, every year, you know what I mean? Because not everybody is familiar with the rules as Scott is, or the select board, et cetera. So in my view, I think you've answered both of them. If we don't have to submit questions ahead of time, and the seating is integrated, so to speak, I think we've answered the questions that we were hoping to get answers to, and I thank you for that.
All right, awesome.
I just had a quick question.
Jamie?
So I just had a quick question. In the past, has it always been like a separate section for seating, right?
Yes.
It
Yeah.
was,
And
definitely,
so I
because it was a
guess-
short raves of hands.
And we have had
underneath.
moderators who have been, I was, making a joke earlier with that, but have been very militant about it. Like, children couldn't sit with their parents because they're non-voters, okay? So
count
they
the
had
little
to
hand.
sit in the non-voter section if they wanted to be with their kids.
Yeah, last year, there was a roped-off section.
So then my question is, and this is just, procedural too, because when you get up to speak, right, you go to the mic and you say your address, and it's kind of on the person to make sure they are, in fact, if they are a non-resident taxpayer, they have to state that. They don't just say the address of their second home. You know what I mean? So I guess that's my concern, is that that is the disadvantage. Even though everyone has clickers, I don't think everybody always brings their clicker, even though you're supposed to hold your clicker the whole time. That is, you're supposed to.
No, I mean, your point is beyond valid. So
Yeah.
you stand up and you say, I'm Scott Carey from XYZ Road. There's nobody looking in the thing, because my seats, my clicker's over there. There's nobody looking through and say, oh, that's a part-time resident. So, but,
And that's what I was getting at,
Yeah.
of being able to easily identify without having to ask every single person. And that's one of the functions of having it be in a section, because when you look out across the crowd, you can see someone who comes up and you could see where they came from instead of just among the crowd. And I think it is important for people who come to town meeting who are residents to know if someone making a comment is not a resident.
It's a, you know, it's a very valid point, and this is, you know, what you've got. You know, you either, if you relax the seating rules, then you're taking people at their word.
We
For-
could give them red shirts, maybe.
For participation,
Pennies.
right?
Get
And,
pennies.
you know,
And I know, excuse me, I'm sorry.
So, no, it's okay, I was
It's okay,
being,
please interrupting.
I
was
know
being
this
inappropriate.
seems like resident, non-resident, or resident, part-time resident. It isn't.
It's not,
It's
yeah.
voter,
Voter,
non-voter.
Non-voter. That's the whole-
Because
yeah.
we have regional projects that could come up, and if, say, our moderator decided non-voters can speak, we could have a lot of non-voters across the region coming because they want to vote for or against something that's on our warrant,
or at least speak to
or at
it.
least speak to it. And so, I don't know, it's just, it seems like a small thing, but it could be a big thing.
and there's also, and like, as we get towards May and we further discuss this, there is also no way to differentiate between voter, non-voter,
Not, right.
non-Eastham person.
Right. Right.
Right? And, right, you know, let's say, you know, I gave a couple of examples earlier. Let's say that the school becomes a contentious battle on the budget, let's say, I'm just making something up.
Yeah.
And then you get 20 or 30 people from another town, so
Right.
now we can't just.
Distinguish who went up there
Right,
from, yeah.
right, exactly. So, and, you know, somebody who lives on Smith Lane, well, we have a Smith Lane in Eastham, who am I to call them out? You know what I mean? And, you know, they could be Smith Lane and Brewster, so.
Meeting house.
It's so, again, it's, and Jackie really described it, this is not to, you know, this is not to push anyone's rights down. This is really for us to ensure that a meeting is run in a proper manner.
Right, and
Right, but I'd also like everyone to consider too, that it's voter, non-voter, it's resident, non-resident, but we're all stakeholders. And 55% of the taxpayers in town are non-residents. So I would look at this as taxpayer, not taxpayer.
This is a voting integrity.
I understand, let me finish. And what I'm saying is, there is value added by someone who is a non-resident taxpayer, as opposed to someone from another
Not
town who
saying
doesn't
that
have a
there's no-
stakeholder in town that maybe comes to influence a piece of regional, you know, legislation, or for lack of a better word, bylaws that we're considering in the town. So I think that is a little bit different from my opinion, you know, because the non-residents do have a stake by virtue of being taxpayers in the town. And I think there's a voice to be heard there. And it should be looked at differently than just you're a non-resident, because you can be a non-resident, not have any stake in the town, and a non-resident who does have a stake in the town by virtue of paying taxes. And I guess that's where it comes from. That's where I'm looking at the voice of the non-resident taxpayers being able to get up there and be able to make their case. And they should be looked at, you know, maybe someone from out of town that isn't a stakeholder in this town necessarily, you know what I mean, should be looked at differently.
No, and I've said it before, and I'm gonna work on this, but I'll end on this. So, non-resident taxpayers, they're, in many cases, my family, my friends, my neighbors, and my clients. So there is not a bone in my body that wants to take a right away from them. But, again, as town moderator, my job is what I stated earlier, and that's the standard that I'll hold myself to. It is by no means stopping from somebody like yourself, or, you know, from participating in our democracy. But there's rules and regs, so, and, you know, as I said, we'll get back to everybody as we get a little closer to the date, but, you know, and I just want to thank everybody for your time.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
And it's only a little over 3 months.
Wow.
I know, it's creeping up on us.
He rounded up.
Appreciated that, Scott.
All right, next, administrative matters, we have the residential tax exemption, and Colleen's here tonight, our assessor.
Well, Colleen will get started, but I just wanted to preface this whole thing by saying Colleen's done a great job. The spreadsheet we've developed a few years ago has been evolved over the years, And more importantly, the data going into the collection of data that goes into that has dramatically improved. So Colleen will update you on that and on the position of the Board of Assessors, and I'll happy to assist anyway.
They're all the same.
Jared was here to see what changed.
I don't need it, I have it on here.
He was there for the early days.
So thank you for having me here tonight, and I wanted to just thank my chair of the Board of Assessors in the audience, Davis Hobbs, is here to support, and as well as staff member Alex Peterson, and I think we have a couple board members zooming in as well, so it's always appreciated. Are you going to do it in slide mode, or this is good?
Yeah, it doesn't.
Okay.
There we go.
I like it. Yeah, make it big. So as you're aware, the Department of Revenue requires that the Select Board must annually visit this topic to vote on whether or not to adopt the residential tax exemption here in Eastham. And generally, we visit this topic in August, usually during the classification hearing where we're setting our tax rate. But we like to be proactive here in Eastham and visit it semi-annually to really give it some time. We've acknowledged that it would be a significant amount of effort to implement this type of thing, so giving it enough time to kind of come to be, if it should be, is, I think, a wise decision. So the topic, I believe, is something we're all pretty familiar with, the calculations of, and just how it comes to be. But if at any time during this you want me to stop and kind of explain a calculation, definitely just stop me and I can kind of dial it down a little bit. I think we can kind of jump right into the potential impacts based on Eastham's current population dynamics. So what I have, currently our total residential parcel count is 6,207. I think at some point before my time, the Select Board came up with their stance that if there was a time that we reached a split of 60% non-eligible taxpayers to 40% eligible, they'd consider implementing the RTE. So the tricky part of all of this really is determining who's eligible, I think. With that number of 6,207, we do have, in part of that, 427 are undevelopable or undeveloped land parcels. So those really have to be removed from that count so as not to skew the data and really give us a good representation of what the population looks like, because those would never be eligible to receive the exemption. So when I'm saying a percentage, I'm talking, the whole number is really the 5780 that we're talking about. So what we do, we look at our motor vehicle excise tax commitments, and our 2023 is what I just looked at, our census data, to come up with who would be eligible. And as of the tax date of January 1st, we have approximately 2,600 eligible residential parcels. So potentially eligible, should this be adopted, and should they apply, those would be the ones who would be eligible for the exempted amount. So that leaves a 55, that's 45% of our population right there. So that gives us a split of 55 non-eligible parcels to 45 eligible parcels. So in this slide, really what I'm displaying is where we are on the left-hand side with the 55-45 split compared to that ideal of where you might consider implementing it on the right-hand side with the 60-40 split. So you can see, I think there's a typo on the beginning of that there, with the tax rate without would always be the regular tax rate, the $7.01. The tax rate, if we were to implement it in our current 55-45, it would increase for the whole residential class to $7.31. So basically how that plays out, you can see for our median single-family home,
our median single-family home, I just need to pull up my slide here to give us our number. So on all those spreadsheets that I handed out, it does show, this is the number that we used for when we set the tax rate as well. The median single-family home in Eastham is 704,800. And the average is 809,842. So on the left, it does show for the median, this is at 10% of the residential value. So the median would save roughly $333, and it would cost the non-eligible taxpayer $214. So I use the median as much as the average. You know, there are more in that range, so it seems to be more applicable to what more people would be affected by it. So again, this is 10% of the residential value. So the amount exempted is 74,879. So starting small with something like a 10% exemption, it gives a small benefit, a small cost, a lot of work, but it's something. You can go to 20. So this is, the next one is if you were to go in a little bit higher at a 20% exemption, that would exempt an amount of $149,759 off of a taxpayer's value, an eligible taxpayer's value. So that shows for the 55-45, that'd bring our tax rate for the residential class to $7.65. And again, this is all based on the fiscal '24 values that we've already been taxed for. This would change when we went into the fiscal '25 billing, obviously, but these are the numbers that we have to work with now to display. So you can see that the median does get significantly more of a benefit at 20%, but that cost to the non-eligible taxpayer also, it's $452, so you still have a considerable cost. Same thing with average down below. They're saving $627 at the cost of $519. So it's not an even taking 10 from one and giving it to another, but it's close. You can see that it changes slightly once you get to that threshold of the 60/40. It begins to look a little bit better. The burden reduces, and that benefit does go up.
I just add, Colleen, so in this little illustration here, if it was a 50-50 split, it would be, I'm pretty sure it would be pretty much a one-off.
Pretty much.
The amount of value received by an eligible taxpayer would be the cost to the ineligible taxpayer. So the bigger the split, the differential is bigger.
Right, and I have in your packets over there, I do have a couple of those slides at the end of this presentation too that I could pull up to have larger on the board if you wanted to kind of examine any of those a little bit more deeply. I can pull those up for reference. So this here just kind of paints a picture really of that cost-benefit analysis. You can really see the size of the benefit compared to the size of the burden. So I wanted to add on the end here a 70-30 split so we could kind of just get an idea of if we were a little bit closer to, mirroring our Truro neighbors. Say they have a 70-30 split, so you can kind of get an idea of how it would look where it's really more, I guess, advantageous for them to implement where they're not burdening many, but they're helping many. It's a small burden. But as you can see, if you go to the left there, it's a little bit more. It's 218 for the 60/40 to 327. And again, this is at 10%, so this is a very minimal benefit. But you can see as you kind of move across the scale to the left, where we are is right in the middle, the 246 burden to the 301 benefit. And you can see as you move to the left again, you see that 50-50 is just about an even split. And what could happen if we moved into that 45-55 range where suddenly it was inverted and you have 45% being the non-eligible and 55 being eligible, quickly your burden kind of outweighs your benefit, and you're doing more harm than good, I would say, because you're not really, you don't have that spread. So I think that that's just something that should also be considered at this point, because when you do implement something like this, it does bring, there's an allure to it. And when they find out what type of eligibility requirements, then we might have several more than we have right now at that 2,600. That's just for fiscal '25. So, I mean, to get to that 50/50 level even, that's just 290 taxpayers that would have to get on the census and get their motor vehicle here. And once we start looking at trusts and ownership and really diving into things, that number is very fluid and it could change in either direction very, very quickly. So we have to keep that in mind, I think. I do have, oh, that is the 20%. So that does show you if you were to go in a little bit heavier with a higher exemption, you do give quite a bit of a benefit to the eligible taxpayer, $627, not off of their taxes, but just less of an increase, I think is the way that we like to look at it, because in the past few years, we have had significant increases just based on the sales. It slowed down a little bit this year, but we never know what to expect. So it would just be $627 less than that potential, I think it was, what, 505 that it went up last year or something? So you're just not raising it as much as you would otherwise.
Right.
So the Board of Assessors did meet about a week ago, and the board did vote unanimously not to recommend the adoption of the residential tax exemption at this time. They held their stance on it as the numbers really hadn't shifted into that beneficial direction yet. So do you,
Let's hope they don't.
Yeah.
That's our job, is to try to keep it, so.
so I'm happy to answer any questions you have about any of these,
Oh, go ahead.
these numbers. On these slides, these printouts that you have in your packet here, it does bring up the break-even point, which I do want to touch upon because I say eligible, but you're only eligible and getting a benefit to a certain point because the tax rate is also increasing. So you'll see, I don't know which one we have up here, this is a 70/30, but you'll see that the range here, I think, is in the my eyes aren't that good, but 2.5 million roughly. You're no longer going to get a benefit. And you can see that that's actually at a significant cost to
The resident.
the resident.
Can you, thank you for bringing that up. I was going to ask that question.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I know that line moves depending on, I mean, obviously the assessed value of property, but also, you know, how you're calculating the formula.
Right. And I mean, you kind of have to come up with what the tax would be at the 701 for
Yep.
that value. And then you take that same value, you minus the exempted amount at that higher tax rate. So you just get to that point where it would have been the same either way had you reduced it, the 149,000 with a higher tax rate or left it at the 701. So you just have to kind of go back and forth a little bit to find that middle where you're no longer benefiting.
The more of the exemption, the more value is reduced off your property, means the higher the break even, right?
Right.
Because even though the higher tax rate, you have more exempted, so it takes a little bit longer to get to the break even.
Interesting.
Because I'm looking at the 55/45 here, oh, that's the 20%. The 55/45, I guess the break-even point's between 1.7 and 1.8 million, am I reading that right?
Yes.
So anyone over that's,
1.790.
wouldn't be,
Resident. Yeah.
they wouldn't,
Right.
they could jump through all the hoops and it wouldn't matter.
Exactly. And I think on that one, if we're looking at the same one, I kind of give a little count of how many residents that would actually be impacting in those ranges. And
So
it
it's
also,
everyone above that.
it's everyone above that.
It has
I mean, we
grown.
have a couple hundred. And once you start getting up to the, the few million, you're increasing their taxes significantly. The eligible taxpayer, you're increasing their taxes 300, 600, 1,000. You're really getting up there once you get to those higher numbers.
Oh, okay, yeah, I see that.
Yeah, I recall that being, like, since I've been on the board, that that break-even point was like under $1 million at one point.
Yep.
which
Right.
at
When we
that
first
time,
started.
Doing
When we
it,
first
yep.
started doing it, which made a lot of sense to really that to me was very impactful and said something. As we start to approach this 1.790 as being the bottom for the break-even point, I feel like we start to enter a territory where that's okay versus someone who's, you know what I mean? If someone's owns a home that's assessed at almost $1.8 million, you've got to start to take into consideration how much a few $100 shift in the tax rate for them is going to impact them versus the benefit of what you're going to be getting with a program like that. Now that the break even is close to almost, 1.8.
The only thing I worry about with that, and we can certainly do a deeper dive, but is that I know that we have a lot of resident taxpayers who have either inherited their homes or bought their homes 50 years ago.
Right.
So, they may have a very low income, but they have a house that is worth a lot of money and will continue to value that house at a lot of money, So that's the part that, it just, we have to be careful of that.
And I think that's also what made me so reluctant, was that very concept.
Yeah.
But I do think as we start to edge up to numbers, like I said, at $1.79 million, I think it's a different breed of house.
But I think it's the same number of homes pretty much over the break-even point that it was in the past. I
Right.
remember
I was
about
gonna
that.
say,
They
I
all
think
work
the
together.
values have increased, and we could certainly look at, because we've done this for several years in a row now, so we could actually do that comparison. But I think what we'll find is we're the exact same people, just
Right.
everyone's values have moved up pretty,
So to
Pointedly.
that point, I more or less support doing it because you have people who bought their homes here perhaps a long time ago, or maybe have inherited a house and they live here, but their income doesn't match. Everybody's house is now valued more because this has been such a popular place to buy a second home. And so people who have just lived here the entire time are like, oh, well, now my house is worth a lot more than it used to be, but I also can't sell it because I wouldn't have anywhere else to go. And so I kind of look at it that way, in the fact that people who purchased homes here at some point, maybe a long time ago, or inherited them, their assessed value went up just by nature of the market.
But they live here, and you're not going to be able to do it. You're going to raise their taxes because even though they're residents and they're the people that you're trying to help.
But
Because there's
we're talking-
people over the 1.8 million.
That was
Yeah.
2 years ago, the 800,000, so they're all,
Yep.
But you're talking about 39 of those units going up $8.39.
At 20%?
Oh, I was looking at this 10.
Yeah, that's the 20%.
And that, you know what I mean? That's a huge,
No, oh, yeah, you're right, $8, yes.
yes.
But that's
that
not,
first
look at the
bracket.
10%.
Then you're bumping into
Actually, 30.
$1.9 million, right? And their tax will go up $72. Now, as you start to approach a $2 million home, granted, I understand people's house values have gone up astronomically, everybody's has, which is why this is a conversation. But even a house prior to COVID that is $2 million now was definitely well over $1 million then. And this is when you're starting to get into a category where when someone has a $2 million house now, it's not like they bought it at $500,000. Do you know what I mean?
possible.
No, it's-
totally possible.
Right.
Think of Noel Biles' house. How much do you think that?
I can't do the
Depending on the
math on
area.
top of my head, but to your point, if someone had a $1.2 million house a few years ago, remember, we had a year of a 20% increase, we had a year of a 30% increase, and we had a year of about a 10.5% increase in values.
Mine was 30%
But
2 years ago.
even if we're talking about these $2 million houses, we're talking about $136 difference. This isn't like we're going to be slamming these people with a $1,000 increase on their taxes. If you want to look at $1,000, you're talking about somewhere between a $3 and a $4 million house. And it's going to be a struggle to convince me that wouldn't serve the purpose of what the RTE is about.
Amy, we do have Joanna Buffington of the Assessors
Awesome.
online with her hand raised.
This goes up $1 million.
Can you bring her in, or?
I'll just let her talk.
Oh, okay. Hi, Joanna.
Might be paying
We'll recognize you.
Mute me. Oh, look, I unmuted myself. Okay.
I know, we had.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I was a non-resident taxpayer for 12 years from 1998 to 2010. I moved here year-round in 2010. I joined the Board of Assessors in 2011, so I've been a resident taxpayer, member of the Board of Assessors for longer than I was a non-resident taxpayer. So I've been with Gail McAleer, Belinda Eystone, and now Colleen. And I'm, 3 assessors, and was happy to work with all of them. And we on the Board of Assessors have all been year-round residents. And we have consistently, every year we look very closely at this, and every year we have come to the decision to not support it. And I want to just have you back up and think what the first purpose, or one of the things that we have a huge crisis in, as the rest of the Outer Cape, is affordable housing. And so that's something we always think, how could this isn't a tool that could help that. I want to say right off the bat, you can ask P-Town, has it helped their affordable housing crisis? No. People who don't own a home here and are renting, if they're lucky enough to find a year-round rental here, the owner of that home won't be eligible for the tax abatement. It's not an abatement, I'm sorry, the exemption, because they don't live in it, and so they would most likely increase the rent to that renter. But I think the bigger problem is we don't have year-round rentals, because most of our non-resident tax-paying homeowners, it's their second home, not their third, fourth, fifth. They have a single second home and they want to use it sometimes. So therefore, they're not going to rent it year-round because they want to be there. So they're going to rent it for, their taxes may go up, they will go up, and they're going to do short-term rentals to help cover that cost. So I want first to ask why would we, we're looking for tools to help people afford to live here. And so as a Board of Assessors, every year we've looked at other ways to do it that actually target people who need it. And with that, we've come up with the senior work-off tax aid, the tax aid program, the senior work-off, finding other ways to get people exemptions who need it. And the family support package, which thanks to the select board and Rich and Jackie, is still up at the state, but that's targeting people who actually need it. The RTE can't target, and sure, people who are eligible and apply for it, everybody wants a break, but it's never going to be money in your pocket. It's just, as Colleen said, it's just going to be a less of an increase if you qualify and apply for the exemption. But it takes a lot of work to do that, and I think that the money to spend on staff and time to do that, we think is better used, put into the family support tax package or the tax aid program, rather than this sort of buckshot approach that you can't take that person living in $1 million house who is living on their Social Security, and they don't qualify because they've left it in trust for their children. I mean, there's lots of unforeseen potentials to this, and once it got implemented, it would be very hard to take it back. So I just really want to emphasize that we keep looking at it, we do. And Suzanne, you're right, or Jamie, that somebody who is in a couple $1 million house and their tax bill is $15,000 and they get an increase of a few hundred, it's not going to make that much of a difference. But once you start looking at each of these cases, there's going to be a lot of things that I think that will be maybe surprises or not expected. So anyway, I've blabbed too long, but again, every year we look at it and we try to find better ways to target things rather than this sort of shotgun approach. Thanks.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Suzanne, sorry.
I'll probably have a comment and a question. The question is, what is the process for applying for the exemption? That's,
Well, that would be something that, along with adopting it, would have to really hammer out an actual procedure. So
oh,
they'd have to meet the domicile criteria, which isn't technically defined solidly anywhere. It kind of varies depending on who you ask. So many towns, they use motor vehicle excise commitment. If you can't require that someone drive, but if they do, they need to have their excise tax come from the town that they're domiciled in. And then also they need to be on the census. They don't need to be registered to vote, but they need to be on the census in that town. Many towns go a step further and require income tax returns with the, redacted, just showing where you're filing from. And you have to file from the Eastham address. So those would be the 3 criteria that most towns would use. And that's just the criteria. Then
Okay.
there's a whole process of, you'd have to do it annually to show that you are still meeting the domicile requirement, and would have to do it in advance of the tax billing ideally, so we know how many we're looking at to.
Yeah, the implementation of this would probably require an addition of a, I'd like to say maybe a part-time person, but initial year or a couple of years would probably be full-time. And then we would find, if once that, after 2-3 cycles of doing these and having a cycle and a routine to it, perhaps find other work to maintain a full year-round schedule for this person. But basically, it would be a staff person to help Colleen with the determinations and the processing. Yeah, a lot of mailing of forms, a lot of receipt of forms,
Right.
maintenance of files, and making sure files are complete and all that good stuff.
my comment on targeted approaches to people who have a need is that when you're needy, you then have to spend all of this time and energy proving that you're needy. And I am interested in programs that make it easy, that you don't have to prove that you're really poor to access something that would help you. And the reason why this sounds like a really easy program for someone who might need it is because we're not asking anyone to prove that you're poor first before offering assistance.
Well, that was the point of the community fund legislation, because you're right, a lot of the eligibility for programs that we can offer through the state have to, have an elderly or financial need. So the Eastham Community Fund legislation is intended to let the select board or whomever you appoint to establish those regulations to make it as easy or as difficult, but more likely easier than not to participate in a targeted program. The challenge with that is talking and working with state legislators to get that language the way it needs to be, not to run afoul of the state constitution. So Jackie and I actually just had a conversation just last week with the state legislature, state senate, on how we can do that. So that legislation's still working its way, and it will need some massaging of the language.
And my other comment, are we going to take the senior tax work-off program next? I mean, it's minimum wage and you're making them work. So I also am just like going back to like, oh, people might have a need and they also might not be seniors, like people who might have young families, they're working, but they're also not eligible for the senior work-off program. And so I'm glad we have the senior tax work-off program, but I just don't feel super great about paying a retired or older person minimum wage so that they can pay off their taxes. Like, that doesn't feel great to me. Like, I'm glad to give them the benefit, but it's like, I don't know, is it minimum wage?
Suzanne, sorry, Jackie, but I get frustrated too, and I've been working on this community fund idea for several years now. in lieu of that, or in anticipation of that happening at some point, don't forget, just like we have this taxation aid fund, which has limitations because of state law, nothing prohibits us from soliciting contributions. And if we receive contributions, we have to honor the restrictions that come with them. So if we solicit contributions as a community, as a town, for aid of working folks that might have a need to pay their taxes, we can establish that. That can happen right now. And I just haven't had that, gone down that path because I wanted to do the bigger path of the community fund. But, that's something, especially if somebody wants to step up and seed a fund for such a purpose, I'd be happy to work with them and set something up to do something that's more immediate.
And I think it's not a one, as we've said many times, and I know you understand, it's not one thing. It's going to be as many tools as we can have. And my frustration with most of our exemptions that we're allowed to take are that they're extremely income related and they don't catch up to inflation and they don't so, I mean, I worked with the aging for a long time, and you see people who are literally $10,000 off income that can't get a variety of programs because of that. So I'm with you in your frustration. The senior tax work-off program now, I will defend till the day I die because I find it's delightful. It's great for the senior. It's great for anyone who they're volunteering for, and it really is volunteering. We pay them, and some of them do very meaningful work, and some of them, it's more social,
Okay, fine.
And I think it's a great, great program, and I wish that wasn't as income restricted, I think.
There are many that we have to turn away from that
Yes.
as
Wait,
well.
the senior,
And
Yes, good workers, good people that we have to
wait,
turn
that's
away.
income,
It's income restricted, too.
It's a state-guided program
the
that tells
senior
us how
work,
much.
the one that's on our agenda tonight is income bound.
Income, yes.
Well,
And
my
it's a
complaint-
low,
By the
it's a
state.
low income.
It
It's
is
My
not a-
complaints
slightly
to the
more than the
governor
exemption,
and
but it's
lieutenant
still
governor.
low.
Kind of just add
So
that
again,
to-
there's not a lot, to Rich's point, there's not a lot that helps that middle, if you're,
Exactly.
if you're doing well and you're making some money, but you're not doing super well, or you're older and you're living on a fixed income and you,
Most people on Cape
Have
Cod
a
are doing
house.
super well because they're,
I know, but I'm just saying, it's, those are the customers, the residents
Right.
that we're trying to figure out
Well-
new things for. And the state really ties our hands. They really limit our ability to use taxpayer money to do anything that benefits an individual.
I guess that kind of to your point of that group of people who just don't quite qualify because they're not quite poor enough, maybe this would be helpful in keeping people in their homes. So I recognize it's not something that is going to necessarily create housing, but it might make it easier on young families or older people to stay in their homes, or even just be like, cool, I don't have to worry about that extra $400 or $600. I can put it towards groceries or childcare or adult care, whatever. So,
But it's more like $300, right, for the 10%.
oh no, I mean, if we're gonna do this, I'm gonna go all in, Amy.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna make them do this for
Well, you-
10%.
Actually,
You just said we'd have to hire an extra staff person.
What's the,
for 10%.
what's the maximum?
35.
35, wow.
Oh,
For some reason, I
Is
thought it was
any,
30.
Provincetown is at 30?
They're 35 now, they just
Oh,
went to
they're
the max.
35.
Went up.
Give us room to.
Yeah, I say a few things on, Jerry, did you have something?
No, I was just gonna say, but P-Town is at the 70-30 split where it's
They're
a
higher than that.
Oh, no,
Yeah,
they're
they're
higher.
80.
They're like 85 or?
80,
yeah.
but it's a significant help for the resident and much
there's no
less of a
residents.
hit for the non-resident.
They're growing again.
Yeah, I kind of, our policy is the 60-40 for 2 years, 2 consecutive years, what we decided on a few years ago. Personally, I would like to see it higher than that. I was in the 70, 75, but we kind of had a little compromise to, because I think it was 50-50 then.
Yeah, Jared and I.
And, when you look at the numbers, I think it really doesn't make sense until you get to that higher level, because it isn't any more tax revenue for the town. it's actually, like you said, we'd probably have to hire somebody to do it, so it would actually, be more, somewhat of an impact. I hope we never get to 70 or 75%. I think, a lot of things we've done, the family support package, when you look at people with kids, that's tens of thousands of dollars
It is.
for them. Even at preschool age, it's what, $10,000 a year? We cover school lunches, the state picked that up, so we have that extra money we put into the little ones now for daycare. And I think we really need to focus on doing more of those sorts of things to keep people here. We've done, we put money aside for people that can't afford to hook up for water, so that, makes it affordable for them. And I just think more programs like that would really help to keep people in their homes.
I fully agree with you on that, Amy. There are a couple of things that, for 25 years, I was a non-full-time resident taxpayer, and I paid my taxes. I didn't pay excise tax. I did pay personal property tax on the inside of my home. And then, but when I bought my house a long time ago, I see the other side. When I bought my house a long time ago, the owner rented the home to his sister and her family. When I bought the house, we took away a rental property from the Eastham housing stock because she had to move and find someplace else to live, and that house was not put on the rental market. So I see both sides of the argument, but I really think that the residential tax exemption is really a blunt instrument that would help someone like me where I don't need that help. I would like to see, if possible, if Colleen or Jackie, you can always say no, but I know of a couple of programs that other towns have. I know that Brewster has a Community Preservation Act surcharge exemption. They just passed that. If you're under 80% of AMI, you can be exempt from the 3% Community Preservation Act surcharge. And that, there's also an exemption for moderate, and I don't know the numbers on that, moderate and low-income seniors that is an exemption, and they would also be eligible for the Community Preservation Act exemption. And I'd like to take a look at some of those things and learn some numbers on that. I also know that P-Town has a provision that if you own a house, if I own a residence and I rent it to someone who's below 80% of AMI, that I can get a tax exemption that year. It's not something that goes on the title or anything, but I can get a tax exemption as a landlord for renting a property to someone below 80% AMI. Now, there are some fairly restrictive rental charges, rental caps and so forth that are in there. But I would really like to see if we can take a look, spend a little more, and I know it's a burden on you, Colleen, but to take a look at some of these other programs to be more targeted so that we can help those who need it. Now, the problem we have, and I look at Jamie and Suzanne straight off, it really doesn't affect what we call workforce housing problems that we have. But I think the community fund that Jackie and Rich have talked about, talking with the Senate, is something. And it's also, when we were in Boston, we heard Governor Healy talk about workforce housing trying to help. And I just read in, I think, the Provincetown Independent this past week, with Sarah Peak saying that she is not running again after this year, but one of her goals is to work on getting legislation for workforce housing. And so I think that that's something that we should try and focus there. I'm not sure, this is a blunt instrument, and it doesn't focus on the people in Eastham who need it.
Jamie, you had something?
Yeah.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry. I always really appreciate your insight, Jerry, because I think you keep a really well-rounded perspective, which is always good to hear. So thank you. And I agree, you know, it's good to look into all those programs. And exactly, like I'm sure you could see Suzanne and I's frustration at these AMI restrictions because that's what's really strangling the Cape and, you know, people in my age group that don't quite meet those numbers but can't afford the homes out here and don't have kids and don't, you know, like, there's just, they're disappearing. And those are your plumbers and your police and your teachers and your firefighters. And, you know, when you look at what some of our fire departments on the Cape are posting about how some of these firehouses are almost empty because they can't maintain staff, because they can't afford it here, because they're not poor. So that's, you know, I think that the board has done a phenomenal job at looking at that population, realizing that not only is this the population that's severely underserved by the state, but it's disappearing. And soon it will create towns that are severely underserved for resources. So when you go to town hall, there won't be someone at the clerk's office. When you call 911, you're gonna have to wait for mutual aid from 2 towns over. Like that's what we're thinking about. It's not just, you know, it's not small, it's big. And so, you know, that's why I think we're so adamant about looking at every tool. Just like, you know, Jerry and Amy do too, they want to look at every tool. And I think the reason that I'm looking outside the scope of this 60-40 number that I know we had voted on, I was on the board when we did it, is because when we did that, it was pre-COVID. COVID took our numbers and it just took the concepts that we had based all our decisions on and it shook them up. Housing prices have skyrocketed because of second homeowners and vacation rentals, and it's at a rate that we never predicted when we made that vote. So that's why when I see something that's like 55-45, and then I factor in what's gone on in the world in the last 6 years that I've been on this board, it starts to make sense. And in addition to, you know, it making the RTE make sense, because it does target some of these populations we're missing, and it's not just the RTE we're looking at. We're looking at why we have to increase certain fees, why we have to do certain things in this town, because the people that live here are like struggling. So we look at what's causing that struggle, and it's the housing market. And so that's what's driving a lot of the decisions we have to make. So it would be, I would feel like I was being irresponsible and not serving the people that put me in this office if I wasn't looking at the residential tax exemption.
That's true.
I have more comments.
Suzanne?
LOL. So I loosely listened to the conversation for the CPA exemption in Brewster. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but at the end of it, I was like, wow, that sounds like a lot of paperwork for someone to do for like $100. And then they have to do it again and every year. And you have to prove that you're super poor with all of this documentation. And like that takes time for people to do, to collect those documents. Maybe they're not even any good at keeping those documents. And so it's not that I'm not interested, I'm interested also in things that are easy for people to do. And I'm curious for people, because Jerry, you're not the only person who's been like, I'm fine paying my fair share in taxes. And then that brings me to what happens if people don't apply? Would that then create revenue for the town? Or,
None of it creates revenue.
but
It
if
just gets
someone,
spread different.
it just gets spread differently. I mean, I think giving people the option to self-identify, if it would help them without having to splay open everything to prove how poor they are, would be nice. And then the people who don't think they need it don't have to do anything. They just continue to pay their taxes. And, but I am interested in how, because I think about that a lot, if somebody does rent their property year-round, are we able to offer them a tax exemption? And I didn't think it was possible.
Not through the residential tax exemption. So
Right.
there are other programs that exist that we could consider, like there's one that just came to be through Maura Haley. Slightly what Jerry was speaking about, the rental exemption. So if you're renting a portion of your property affordably, then would be able to kind of calculate a reduction in that portion of your house.
And that came with Mora?
Yes.
Oh, okay, that's why.
That's why I call it, that's
Yeah.
very AMI.
I was like, oh, that was new. And I think maybe my last comment is I'm interested in doing stuff before it's an emergency. And this idea that we're gonna just cross our fingers and hope that we don't end up like P-Town or Truro or Wellfleet, like, I don't know. I feel like that's how we got into part of this, is we were like not proactive sooner about some of these things. And I'm uncomfortable with the idea of being like, we'll just wait until maybe this thing happens, and then it's like, oh, well, what could we have done to prevent it from happening in the first place?
I mean,
I agree with you, Suzanne, but I don't think this is the
The
thing
tool.
that will stop that. I don't think it's going to make someone, a part-time resident, sell their home if this is implemented, nor is it going to make homes more affordable for year-round
just-
people. I don't see that happening, and for me, it seems like a small benefit, you know, in the grand scheme of things for people.
I guess I just have known people or been in a situation where, you know, $300 was really important and, or is still important, or
Right. No, I got you.
is the thing that makes it too much or makes it too stressful, so.
at risk of stirring the pot, Amy, if I may.
Go
Stir
ahead,
it,
Rich.
stir it, Rich.
I'm not
Candy.
I
saying
was
that,
just saying to Colleen, you're the calm one.
I'm saying this very calmly, and not to say that I necessarily recommend or advocate for this, but since Jerry brought up the idea of an exemption for the CPC, well, just in 2021 was the first year that it sunsetted. That's an entirely discretionary, and that saves you 3% and actually reduces work. It doesn't add work.
What is this?
We could eliminate
You
the
could eliminate the
CPC.
CPC. It saves 3%.
Not charge us all 3%.
Okay, but, oh my God, guys.
Yeah, but
Talk
we use
about
that
it.
for good things.
Yes, we do. It's
Yeah.
all, you know.
Housing, it's, you know.
But if you're looking to
a lot of
reduce
that.
people's burden, that's, that's why I bring, again, at risk of stirring the pot a little bit, that,
You're going to be very
No, it was,
popular.
you did warn us, and then somehow I was still surprised.
Yeah,
Dave had a comment? And then I'll get to you, Jerry.
I just wanted to say that there are so many people within this town that try to help every person that needs help. They go out of their way to find these people, to help them, to fill out the paperwork. It's incredible, the amount of time that different people put into helping those people. So I don't want you to think that they don't care and they're not doing anything and they're letting things slip by, because they spend an incredible amount of time trying to help those people and to help them get every possible savings they can. They come in for one thing and it's like, no, you can't do that because of your income. But there's this, this, and this. It may not be the same amount, but at least it's something. And they go over backwards to try and help the people. And it's not just Colleen, and it's not just Alex, but it's at the senior center. It's all
Rec
over the
department,
place.
yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I just want you to know that they're trying their ever-loving best to do that. And like Jackie said, it's going to be all kinds of things that's going to help. But I agree, I don't think that RTC is the right method to do it. But I just wanted to state that. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Wait, and we vote on it every year, right?
Right.
Absolutely.
yes.
You're going to vote again in August.
Right, August is when we have the official
actual
public
vote,
hearing and,
Right. So I guess I don't necessarily think that if we did it 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, whatever the case may be, I feel like the board is flexible enough in maybe
it's not
not
necessarily
doing
going to
it.
be us all the
The
time. I
citizens
mean,
Well, that's what I
right now,
meant.
we have a very reasonable
this-
board.
It's very hard to remove it
Wait,
once you
so
put
are
it
you
into
saying
place.
that
Oh,
this
yeah,
would
so
would be a
once you-
popular policy among
Once,
residents?
if you enact it, then once you remove it, the resident would then have to pay that difference plus the new tax in that year that you took it away.
It would be a shocking year for them.
Shocking year.
Oh,
I see what you're saying.
I see your point.
All right.
Huh?
So we've had, I think,
I think
yeah,
I
we've
got it
had,
all
we've had
out,
a good,
thanks.
good, everyone got, I think, everything off their chest. We received an email from the Part-Time Resident Taxpayers Association that they had, I don't know, I guess 100 or so, I'll let you speak in a moment, people sign on to, and, their reasons, so we're very, very aware of their reasons for not, wanting to do this, that it is unfair, and things like that. So, again, this isn't a public hearing, we're having the public hearing in August every year to set the rate. This is just sort of our own time to think about it and digest it, and in case we're leaning toward doing it, they're gonna need a lot of notice to get this implemented. So as far as questions, comments from the public, I'll take a few comments. I don't want to belabor this. We obviously have kind of set in our minds how we're going to approach this already. But are you Mary? Yeah. The head of the part-time residents. I'll recognize you to come up and say a few words.
I do have a list that I want to share.
Okay.
Just,
This is everyone that signed on?
That's about 406 people that signed on.
Wow.
And we're up to 500. So,
I appreciated your letter. It was very well thought out and succinct.
well, good. Thanks for letting me speak tonight. I'm president of the EPERDA, also a homeowner since 2008, which is a home that's been in our family since 1970. And I just wanted to share a few points that we made in the letter that was endorsed by almost 400, or just about 500 of our part-time members. And I'll skim through here because we've touched on quite a bit of this. But basically, some of the points that we brought up in our letter were that it's tax neutral, right? It's just a way of redistributing the taxes from the full-time to the part-time taxpayers. It's not needs-based, so we're not really sure if we would help all those that need it, and some would benefit who don't need it, as we've discussed tonight. Also, it doesn't really seem to be working in other places. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of affordable housing in Cambridge or Martha's Vineyard or P-Town, other places that it's being implemented. And there are other programs that are out there, and there's a big push statewide right now, Maura Healey's housing package, that may address some of the problems. In addition, a lot of our part-time residents contribute about $1.5 million worth of rental tax revenue to Eastham. And most importantly, we all enjoy living in Eastham, whether it's for weekends or a season, whether, some of us, like myself, had kids who worked jobs out here for the summers as seasonal employees. People have their weddings out here, all sorts of gatherings. We have people who volunteer for nonprofits. We have people on town boards. We all respect the work that the business owners do, the contractors, you, the town administration. We value the quality schools. We value the first responders. And although we can't vote, we support a lot of the town initiatives. We don't, we don't like being blamed for driving the housing market or causing increases in the housing, or being bashed on social media, which, believe me, we all see it. I appreciate Jerry looking into other programs. I think if we take the time and look at other programs, maybe we can solve some of the affordable housing. And just switching hats a little bit, I'm also a Realtor licensed in Massachusetts, and I just want to say that this problem is not unique to the Cape. It's all over the state. I work with many, many full-time, many first-time homeowners who also can't live where they work. They're traveling an hour. I'm working with nurses, researchers who can't afford to be in the Boston area, and they're out in the Metro West area. So it's not unique to the Cape. Hopefully, there will be more housing built and more programs put into place that can help people. I know we're all compassionate about people's situations, and, you know, we want to help people too, and maybe some of our part-timers can help streamline some of the paperwork and help out in some way. But I think we're all in it for the right reason, to help people. We just want to find the right programs. So, thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Mary. Do you need to? Okay.
You know, just-
Rebuttal.
Yeah, just so you know, we are well aware that this is a nationwide problem, but we were voted by the residents of Eastham to sit on this board to do this. So that's why we're doing it. And, you know, it's not because we're unaware that this is a problem other places, but we're here to represent Eastham. So that's what we're doing. And, you know, the point of the RTE isn't to create affordable housing. Like, that was never, you know, I don't know if that was, you know, miscommunicated, but that's not the intent. It's to relieve the tax burden on the year-round resident. That's it, you know, so, you know, it seemed like it was just a little confusing there. We are definitely working on developing other tools, and, you know, it's up to the will of the board on what those tools are going to be moving forward that we're going to try to, you know, develop further. All the tools that this board does come up with are extremely well thought out, and usually we try to find some common ground so that everyone on the board can get behind it, so that we feel like it does support what needs the most support in this town. And so I think these conversations, whether it be RTE, whether it be fees, whether it be, you know, the community support fund, all of those things are so important to have in public with everybody. But, you know, we appreciate the letter with the signatures. You know, I think sometimes it is lost a little bit on the year-round resident not doing something similar, but I think that their letter with signatures is the vote that they take to put each of us here. So that's, you got to remember that that's also part of our decision too. That's a letter that we carry with us to every meeting as well. So we take everything into consideration, so thank you.
All right, I don't see any hands up online, and I don't think anyone else here, so we'll go ahead and vote. This would be a vote to implement the residential tax exemption. So we'll start with Jerry.
No, at this time, no.
Suzanne,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
and myself, a no. So it does not pass. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, yeah.
Thank you, Colleen. I know
Thank
it's a
you,
lot of
Colleen.
work, but we really appreciate it, because
Yeah.
when we first started
Oh my
really
God,
digging
it's-
into this, we had no idea.
This is like so much better.
Isn't it lovely?
Yeah,
It's
thank
lovely
you.
for everybody too, like,
Really.
because I feel like that people that are watching the meeting want to participate. It's like 10 times more confusing when it doesn't make sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is really
Really
nice for
appreciate it.
everybody.
Well, I'm
Thank
always
you.
available to anyone who needs to, or wants to, doesn't understand it and wants to learn more about it. Taxpayers, taxpayer.
Everybody.
Your graphs,
Everybody.
your graphs were good.
Thank you.
Spreadsheets.
Thank you to Colleen and Alex. The level of service in assessing is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. All right, senior tax work-off, next.
Don't leave. It seemed like you were done, but
Alex is sneaking out the back door. It's okay.
it's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Alex. So for the senior tax work-off, that's another, just shifting gears here.
Yeah, it's okay.
So that's a program that we already have in place, but we're looking to just, this, part of this bill that Maura Healy passed, it increased the amount that they're able to work off.
Oh, good.
So it's up to $2,000 that they're allowed to,
Wow.
instead of, where were we, $1,000?
Yep, for 15.
And they can do that
It's $1,000.
in conjunction with other exemptions. They're allowed to do that in addition to the senior exemption, so.
What is the income restriction on it?
So I think it's 40,000.
Less. It's like
It's
Right,
like
it's still
such a,
$1,500
it
a
is,
month, kind
Right.
it is a small, it's,
Small.
It's not a
is.
lot.
But we've,
My mom wouldn't have qualified, and she lived in public housing, so.
Oh, my gosh. And I-
that
but
is
I-
what the state
that-
said.
I
You know,
understand.
we've risen it as
Right.
much as we can on our end
Right.
to go to the max. So adopting this would just be taking advantage of the most that it's able to help. And like you said, it's just another one of those tools to help this
I was all
specific
excited.
population that is experiencing a lot of need at this time.
And of course, this program costs money, so if we do a $2,000 exemption
Right.
to 25 people, you can do the math on that.
Right.
So Rich has to find the money in the budget.
How many people are currently taking advantage of the program at $1,000?
Well, we're in the process of getting it going. So we have 12 applicants who are interested in just, you know,
And I think last time we had said up to 25 people. We would do up to 25 people in the first year and then kind of
Okay,
reassess it.
that seems fair.
So,
And what's the rate per hour? Is it 15?
it's minimum wage, so it's
That's more
The
than that
state
then.
minimum
Sep-
wage.
state minimum wage, right? So
Yeah.
it's,
16, 17 now? Is that,
No,
no?
no, that's,
No.
it raised
Oh,
to
it's
50.
15, I think.
15,
Oh, I
50?
thought it went up.
It was going up year by year until it reached 15. I don't think it was going to keep going up. Yeah.
so it's still down there. But
So-
like Jackie mentioned before.
So it's 100, it used to be 100 hours, this makes it 133 hours. 133 hours, so it's not that much. But,
But they do find a lot of
Yeah, something.
joy in
Yes.
offering their
It's
services.
really a good
It gets
program.
them out and they, you know, we try to.
That's good.
We don't have a lot of places to place them at this moment, but we're trying to find, you know, different departments to help find what they used to do and what their strengths are, and then to match it well, because we do have needs all over town where I think we can place all of them that are interested, so it's a
That's
good
great.
program.
Jerry, you had something?
Yeah, one thing, just to clarify something, Colleen, I think the number was either 20 or 25 max, and I can't remember, but we have 12 applicants. Is there any further waiting list or anything like that where
No
people want to
waiting
get in?
list. That's just as many that have shown interest at this time that have been income eligible. So we've
that's the
had
problem.
many that we've had to turn away from all exemptions who are actually often near that break-even point. Those are the seniors that come to us most often. They all happen to be in that specific group.
Is it 40,000 per person or
I think that's a
household?
40 and then 55, I think, is for
Two people?
Oh, so they have raised it, that's good.
for married.
Yeah.
So no.
Okay,
40 a person
It's
or
40 for a
55
single person, two people, 55, which is what? Is
Household.
that like 40? Does the math if it's, Rich, what's that of AMI for the area?
Oh,
Oh, I'm not.
AMI
It's-
for one is
it's
around
over 60.
47, I think. Wasn't it 47 for one person, AMI?
Well, what percentage of
Well, that's like
AMI?
30, that's 30% of AMI, I think, isn't it? Or 60% of
Yeah,
AMI?
AMI is like 78 right now.
Right, it's like 78,000 for area median income.
That's
80,
100%?
Roughly 80, yeah.
80% of AMI for one person is $64,000.
Yes, so
Okay,
100% is like 80, yeah,
I'm going to trust your math on that one.
Yeah,
something like that.
around
It's close.
Yeah.
It's not math, it's just the numbers I've heard.
Right.
Yeah.
So for looking at the cost that, what Rich has to go out and start his bake sale and whatever for, we're looking at right now 12 people and it's at $1,000 more, so it'd be $12,000 additional liability to the town.
24,000 because it went up to 2,000.
Yeah, but no, but it
24
was
total.
already, it was
already
already one, so
Right,
it's only
correct.
additional 12. It's only additional 12
Exactly.
at this point? Okay.
So actually, in theory, if it went up to 2,000 and we limited it at 12, we would still be in the budget that we
It'd still be
allocated
in the budget that you allocate.
for now,
This
until
fiscal
moving
year.
forward, if we
Right.
want to increase it.
More, yeah.
And this, you said could be used in conjunction with other exemptions?
Yes.
Okay, because I feel like
Yeah, it's an extra.
there's some exemptions that
Well, and that's
get
the,
tricky that,
right. And that's the nice thing with you know, I know it's a hassle to do the income eligibility, but once you do it, you can spread it across. Like I know someone recently lost their spouse, they were gonna sell their house and leave. I said, oh no, there are programs. So they've gotten a new roof, they've gotten, you know, new heating system, new windows, all sorts of things that their house needed that, you know, they didn't have to pay for it. They can stay in their home. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I think there's heating oil, you know, there's all sorts of things that we can really do for people to keep them in their homes.
But it's true, once you
Right, you're in.
once you're
You don't
income
have to
eligible
keep
for
doing
one,
it for every
you can
single
really
thing.
just duplicate that information because it's mostly the same that all the agencies ask for.
what was the, what was it called that Maura Healy did that this was included in?
Oh, yeah,
I don't know the name of the bill off
I
the top,
just read it too.
like tax relief something, that was the.
Oh,
the main
okay,
thing.
all right, all right. Well, because
It was the
sometimes
first
they
one,
like
not the
put
second one
lots
that
of
I know
stuff
about.
into
Yeah.
a
It could have been in the
thing.
housing bill.
And
I
she's
don't know.
big with
yeah.
names too, like.
So,
I thought it was in the housing bill, maybe, but I guess not.
Since we're talking about exemptions and Colleen's here, this is not an exemption, but I think Bear is repeating because it's relatively new to Eastham. And I think we have maybe one participant on our deferral program, Colleen?
Not at this time.
So, nobody, but a elderly deferral program means that they don't have to
Right,
pay taxes
taxes.
at all, and they don't need to work, they don't need to do the work-off program. If you're eligible, and Colleen makes that determination with the Board of Assessors, you defer your taxes, and it adds to your property as a lien until your eventual passing.
Now, is that a Board of Assessors decision, or is that an income?
It's not, you have to show either, yeah, it's need, so it's,
Okay.
you can either
Hardship.
be infirmed or,
Or
right, some
hardship,
type
yeah.
of hardship.
So you're not limited
It
to
doesn't have to be a financial hardship.
That's a great program.
That is a
People
great
don't
program.
want to do it because they
Sounds
want to
good.
leave all of their money
Yeah.
to their ungrateful children. But
Ungrateful children.
Wow.
it is a really good
Wow.
program.
Program, but they do feel like they're passing the burden.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And it's not, they're passing an asset that's just worth a little tiny
Right.
bit less.
yeah. Well, in the grand scheme of things, it's a small percentage.
It
of
is.
the
Right,
property.
and it helps them in the
Right,
now.
right. It actually is,
Right.
in the end, a whole lot on the,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, do we need to
Yeah,
vote
because-
anything on this
because
to
if you have
accept
like
that
5 years left and
increase,
your
or?
taxes are
Increase it to
$4,000,
two,
it's
the
like-
exemption
it's
to
20,000.
2,000.
Okay.
For
Not a
the,
lot.
the work-off amount.
So we need to
Make a
vote to
motion.
increase.
To 2,000.
To
I'll make a
2,000.
motion to increase the
Senior tax.
senior tax work-off program from $1,000 to $2,000.
I'll second it.
All right, any more discussion? All right, we'll vote. Jerry?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes,
Jamie?
Yes.
And I, 4-0.
look at us
All right,
agreeing.
thank you.
How would we get more information about the CPA exemption? Would that come out of your department too? Because,
Yes,
just like,
everything comes out. Money.
I just didn't know when the appropriate time would be to look at that or
not.
In your tax rate setting process in the summer,
Okay.
so there's a $100,000 CPA exemption available. Is that one of the 4 options, or it's a totally separate option?
It's separate option, yeah.
Yeah.
And that lowers your, it's the same thing, right? It lowers
Lowers
the value.
No, I meant for seniors.
Oh, a whole, across the
Not the remove the CPA for the town. I mean the one specifically,
just-
Seniors.
just senior exemption.
I'd have to just find
Yeah,
some more
Jerry
information
mentioned
out
it.
about it.
Yeah, or AMI. It was
Yeah,
AMI
it's
based
what's,
senior.
what Brewster just passed in their town meeting, and it's not there because they have an election on it. It's an exemption in section 3E1 of the CPA
I love that. You have
Act,
that.
44B.
It's amazing.
Thanks, Jerry.
I love that you have that
Well-
just where exactly it is,
Little
right
Post-it
next to
note on
you.
his, all right. Okay, next we have committee resignations.
Thank you, Colleen.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Colleen,
Yes.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you.
We've lost everyone now.
Yeah.
No,
We'll be okay, thanks, Beth.
we wouldn't stay if we didn't have to.
Only if you switch. You have to switch with me.
All right, we have a couple resignations. Bonnie Nuendo from the Affordable Housing Trust and Saul Fisher from the Open Space Committee.
I guess I make a motion to accept Bonnie's resignation and Saul's resignation. Can we not accept them? I just,
They're very long-term,
Yeah.
dedicated volunteers, but they must leave to do other things now.
no, I know, I just think it's funny that
We actually have.
can be like, no.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there
right.
could be.
Oh,
I guess
global
like
question.
There is a lo-
procedurally, I'm
There is
like,
a lot of things that you do as a ceremonial act.
oh, it's, okay,
There
thank
have been
you.
people
Like,
though
I'm out
that,
of here no matter what you vote, y'all.
there have been people that we've not voted on it and then talked them into
Yes.
staying.
Oh, wow, peer pressure.
So it has
Okay.
happened.
Anyway, I make a motion to approve the committee resignations as printed on the agenda.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, we'll vote. Jerry?
Yes,
Suzanne?
Yes.
Jamie?
Aye.
And myself, aye. We'll get some letters to them.
Oh, yeah, who's?
I think, I know Art's usually our letter writer. Do they have a
template?
sort of a template?
I
in
don't,
the-
he does these really
I know.
personal letters, so we'll just have to get some info on these people.
Okay.
and try
Well,
to do
I
it.
was on the Affordable Housing Trust with Bonnie, so I can
Yeah,
help
you
with
could do
that.
Yeah, Saul.
And then Saul, we can get someone from Open Space to give some input. That would be great. And
Do
we
you want
also
me
had
to
Ian.
ask Karen? No, she's on open space, right?
She's on Open Space.
Yeah. Do you want me to ask her about it?
Sure, that'd be great.
Yeah, if we can get some bullet points, that'd be great.
All right, new and upcoming agenda items?
I feel like we have a stacked agenda coming up.
Do you?
I'm good.
We have fees next week.
It's going to be a biggie. People
Next
are
week.
looking forward to that.
Well,
So
yes, and sadly, I'll be well enough and I'll be there to run the meeting.
I'll be attending by Zoom. I'll be in Boston, but
that is on the 5th, correct?
on the
Nice.
5th, yeah.
On the 5th, yes.
I will be here.
It's the fee hearing?
The fee hearing. Yeah, just a little tidbit that we're trying to find out some more information, but, we talked about the pickleball fees. When Joanna was in high school, she used to sit at the tennis courts and collect money for people that scheduled
Yes.
tennis. It was like she's somewhere around $3.
Wellesley charges
This was-
$15 an hour.
This was over 40 years ago, though, so
know.
this isn't anything new.
No.
So, we were gonna talk to Maya and see if we could find out exactly, like, how much they brought in and, because she was paid,
Yeah,
and that basically was how they paid her,
Right.
by collecting
and
fees
that's
from
the
people.
point of the fee.
Exactly.
We have to pay something.
Well, and I've tried to explain to people that it
And
wasn't,
they wanna win
it
the
wasn't that we came up to it just to gather more money from people. They approached us and wanted exclusive times,
Yes.
so,
I think the school district does it with the Orleans courts in
Yeah.
high school, so
Yeah.
it's the school district's been getting that revenue forever.
yeah, so. So we don't have anything else that's newish coming
No.
up and upcoming, all right? So town managers report.
The only thing I wanted to talk about is, we're getting a lot of questions, and I'm hearing from the library that they're getting a lot of questions about the exterior renovations at Town Hall. They are being paid for by CPA funds. This is the first time Town Hall has been touched since, and the outside since the 80s. I think there was a mini repair of the cupola at some point, but we haven't repointed the brick. So it's going to be, new trim, new fascia boards, replacement and painting. All the brick is going to get repointed, so new grout. Is it grout when it's brick?
Yeah.
Yeah, mortar.
Mortar.
Mortar. New mortar.
Same concept.
And a lot of the digging up, people are very concerned about the digging up. The digging up is because over the years, when we've gotten a new utility, or we've needed a new cable wire, or we've added HVAC, we've just kind of stuck it anywhere. And so we have removed all of those things, and we are relocating them to where they should be, to bring the historic nature of the building back, fixing the front steps. We're hoping to minimize the tree damage, but there is a lot of, activity out there, so we're worried about that. And then the final question is, are we going to have a sign? And yes, the sign has been ordered by the architect. It's going to be a nice sign. I don't want anyone to read the sign while they're driving. If they're stopped at the stoplight, they can
Lovely
read the
time to
sign.
read the sign. Is there maybe something we could do to, I know that there's lots of information. I hate to create more posts or create more, but
No, we need to, I think, for
but
this.
to do something
yeah,
just talking
yeah.
about the CPA funds and what that means, and also what it means for the outside of the building, like you
Yeah,
just
and maybe the projects, we can always just do the town hall and then list all the other projects that they're paying for this year.
That would be great.
Because I know that I looked on this, on the website, and they have the previous ones that have been completed, but not the current ones
I know, we
ongoing.
gotta update our
But,
website.
it's hard to
It's better than it
update it in the
was,
middle. Yeah, there's
but
a lot
that's
of
a lot.
mud around, what do you say? They're building forms like crazy
Yeah.
people.
Exactly.
Kind of in that same vein of maybe on the town website, you could put the information about the CPA awards and little updates on theirs, but maybe a project page, maybe. I feel like I was trying to look for something on the website, and I was like, oh, it's under this page. I would have never thought to find it under this page, but sometimes I get questions about, where Tea Time is standing,
So
where
ongoing
wastewater
projects.
is standing, and then also the road, and I would love to see it kind of in one spot. Maybe it is in one spot, but
We
I'm not
just-
entirely sure.
Like an ongoing
No,
project.
no, we gotta take the Tea Time website and update it to the master plan, make it the master plan website. And I did talk to Olivia Oldham at the Provincetown Independent is doing an article on the updates of Tea Time, and so she asked a lot of questions, and that was one thing I asked her, is what do you think we should do, and to get the word out more, and she said, the website is outdated, so we've got to
Yeah.
get that out.
Yeah.
We have, for the Capital Projects Committee, we have a website that consolidates all the capital projects, but we do not have one place where all of the projects are in one spot.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's under capital projects.
And wastewater, I think we were going to put the TWMP up on the website, and I think it got put up, but I'm not sure.
It just has Rock Harbor improvements
That's on the capital
on
projects.
the capital projects
Yeah.
committee charge. I guess they're just, they're large projects, there's supporting
No, they have
documents.
their own page, it's just not a public page, with everything, contracts and everything. Just has to be opened up to the public.
Oh, okay. I mean, I just meant here's the link of our meeting when we discussed it, or here's the presentation, or here's maybe an overview of the project, or here's an update to it, just because they're large ongoing projects.
Okay.
I don't know who would do that,
Yeah.
because someone would have to do that.
Well, we've started down the path of, having, and we've increased our IT, we've increased some support for Devon, but we really, you know, even the tiny town of Truro has a full-time communications person now. Really, it's sad. So, so we may need to, you know,
Invest.
have Kayla move over into a more
Tech.
full-time PR
Communications.
communications role, because there is, just updating all those pages on the website as we go and as we add meetings and stuff, unless we could figure out a way to do it automatically. Okay. Rich has some ideas.
More work.
Yeah,
But
I
we're
mean, they
with you.
take,
We're
they
with
take,
you.
they take updating and, you know,
know.
Civic Plus is like, oh, your staff can do it themselves, but
I
then
know.
like, but then nobody does, and nobody's
who?
like a website
You're right,
expert,
it's like
and you're.
who's responsible
Yeah.
for what? So I think that's what happens, you know. is-
Feigned ease of use.
It's, yeah, don't get me started on
Yeah,
Civic
I'm
Plus.
sure.
Oh, my God, yes.
All right. Minutes.
Oh, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of January 22nd.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? All right, vote. Jerry?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Jamie?
I,
Myself, aye. All right. Anything else? Any correspondence?
I just want to compliment Jamie on her black sheep sweater.
oh, I was admiring your sweater. I said something at the beginning of the meeting.
Good sweater.
We'll have to trade sometime.
Okay.
I have a blanket like that with a black sheep.
Yeah, I love the cable knit.
I know, it looks very good, Jerry. It
Yeah,
looks
that's a
good.
good one.
The last time we saw
Yeah.
you, you were a bit under the weather, so it's good to see you looking
Yes.
better.
Yeah.
You have color.
Yeah, well, I hope to be there. Jack, one question for next, for the 5th. I should be in pretty good shape by Thursday. Do you want to meet with me to see what's up going on the agenda for February 5th?
Yeah,
this
maybe,
week?
because what I don't want is the really important fee changes that we have to go under the radar because they're not like pickleball.
Right.
You know, because we have some
They're not sexy
good
fees.
ones that I really want you to consider and that are going to be impactful to residents. And, you know, so we need to highlight some of those so that they know it's coming.
Yeah, if you want.
All right, I'll be in touch to
Usually,
work on.
yeah, we meet Wednesday morning.
Wednesday at 10 is usually when Art and I have come in.
So you won't be there, right?
I'll be Zooming, but if you want,
Yeah, I
and
can go.
Jerry want
I'll
to
be
come
there,
in.
yeah. Okay.
Wednesday,
When-
I cannot because or what time Wednesday, actually?
Well, that's up to you then.
Because my dog has a,
Yeah, it's more up to you and Jerry when you want to discuss it then with Jackie.
And the 31st is, yeah, I have it as Wednesday, the 31st at 10, but it could be Tuesday or,
Tomorrow?
that's
oh, yeah,
tomorrow,
that's tomorrow. We don't have an agenda yet.
right?
Oh.
Thursday?
It's coming up fast, isn't it?
Or
boy.
I could do Wednesday, my appointment is at, I have to have my dog and be in Wellfleet at 10:30 a.m. So
Thursday would be good because that's when we have to post the
You have
agenda.
to post it by that evening.
could we do like 9 a.m.?
Yep.
On Thursday?
9 a.m. on Thursday at Jackie's office. Sounds good.
All right, thank you.
All right. It's going to be, yeah, it's going to be a rough meeting, I'm predicting.
Well-
But hopefully, you know,
We're going to be
you'll be
kind. We're going to be.
Not reassuring in the.
I'll be on Zoom, so I can gavel
There's a
from,
gavel, yeah.
yeah.
We have-
We'll be kind.
I'll be there, don't worry.
There you go. All
The
right,
meanie, the black sheep.
I'll wear the sweater. I'll wear my sweater.
All right.
9
Would
a.m.
you like a motion to adjourn?
I think we're there. Second.
all right. Any discussion? All right, vote. Jerry?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Jamie?
Aye.
Myself, aye.